The Graviton Academy floated in the void between three binary stars, its crystalline structure gleaming like a jewel against the cosmic backdrop. For 2 centuries, it had been the most prestigious institution in the galaxy, where only the strongest species sent their finest specimens to master the art of high-gravity combat and survival. Dean Vorthak stood 8 feet tall, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming purple-black under the Academy's artificial lighting. His 4 arms gestured dismissively as he addressed the small human figure before him in the orientation chamber. "Miss Sarah Chen," his voice rumbled through multiple vocal chambers, creating an unsettling harmonic resonance. "I must inform you that this institution operates under 15 times your planet's gravitational standard. Your bones will snap here. Your cardiovascular system will collapse. Your species simply lacks the biological framework for survival in our environment." Sarah looked up at the imposing alien Dean, her brown eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear. At barely 5 feet tall and weighing perhaps 120 pounds, she seemed absurdly fragile compared to the other students visible through the chamber's transparent walls. Hulking Gorvani with their reinforced bone structures, the flexible Zentorians, whose bodies could compress and expand like springs, and the crystalline Vexhi who existed in a state between solid and liquid. "With respect, Dean Vorthak," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the artificial gravity already making her feel as though she wore a suit of lead. "My species has a saying, 'Hold my beer and watch this.'" The Dean's compound eyes flickered, the Kithrin equivalent of a confused blink. "I am unfamiliar with this beverage ritual. However, I assure you that bravado will not compensate for biological limitations. In our first exercise alone, students must navigate the crucible chamber while maintaining 15 gravities. The Gorvani bones are 3 times denser than yours. The Zentorian circulatory system operates on hydraulic principles that—" Sarah was no longer listening. Instead, she had stepped back, taken a running start despite the crushing weight pressing down on her, and launched herself into a perfect cartwheel. The movement was impossible. Under 15 times Earth gravity, her 120-pound frame effectively weighed 1/800 pounds. The Kithrin physiology demanded auxiliary breathing apparatus just to move. The Gorvani required powered exoskeletons for anything more strenuous than walking. Yet here was this tiny human, spinning through the air with apparent effortlessness, landing gracefully on her feet with a grin. "How?" Dean Vorthak's question emerged as barely a whisper. Sarah dusted off her hands. "Bone density isn't everything, Dean. Earth gravity might be weaker than what you're used to, but my planet taught us other lessons. We learned to work with what we have." She gestured toward the viewing window where other students were struggling through basic mobility exercises. "Your students fight the gravity. Humans dance with it. We've spent millennia as persistence hunters. We don't power through obstacles, we adapt around them. We find the rhythm, the flow, the path of least resistance that still gets us where we need to go." Over the following weeks, the impossible human continued to defy every projection. In the crucible chamber, while other species used brute strength to smash through barriers, Sarah slipped between them like water, using momentum and physics rather than raw power. When the Zentorian combat instructor demanded students break reinforced metal plates, Sarah studied the material's stress points and delivered precise strikes that shattered them with a fraction of the force others required. "She's not stronger," Professor Kelthera observed to Dean Vorthak as they watched Sarah outperform a Gorvani 3 times her size in the endurance trials. "She's more efficient. Her species developed under constraints that forced innovation, rather than brute evolution." During the infamous atmospheric dive, a test where students had to survive in crushing depths of heavy gas while solving complex mathematical problems, Sarah astounded everyone by not just surviving, but humming while she worked. When asked about it later, she explained that controlled breathing techniques were common among human divers and musicians. "The pressure doesn't fight me because I don't fight it," she said simply. But it was during the final examination that Sarah truly shocked the Academy. The test required students to rescue a victim from a collapsed gravitational field generator, while the chamber's gravity fluctuated wildly between 5 and 25 times standard, conditions that had hospitalized students in previous years. While others struggled with the constantly changing forces, Sarah moved like a dancer in a variable tempo song. She flowed with the gravity changes, using the lighter moments to build momentum and the heavier ones to change direction. When the rescue required lifting a 400-pound, effective weight 6,000 pounds at peak gravity training dummy, she didn't try to deadlift it. Instead, she used leverage, timing, and the gravity fluctuations themselves to roll, slide, and pivot the dummy to safety. "Impossible," breathed Commander Zexivor, the Academy's military attaché. "My species evolved on a world with 18 times standard gravity. I cannot perform what she just accomplished." Dean Vorthak watched Sarah help her exhausted classmates, after completing the trial in record time. "Perhaps," he admitted, "we have been approaching strength incorrectly. We assumed power meant resistance to force. This human demonstrates that true strength might mean harmony with force." As Sarah graduated with highest honors, the first human to ever complete the program, Dean Vorthak approached her one final time. "Miss Chen," he said, "I must apologize for my initial assessment. I stated that your bones would snap here. Instead, you have proven that flexibility can be stronger than rigidity, that adaptation surpasses raw power, and that sometimes the smallest students cast the longest shadows." Sarah smiled, performing one last cartwheel in the crushing gravity that had once seemed so impossible. "Dean Vorthak, my species has another saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. But I prefer the version that goes, grace under pressure isn't just surviving the storm, it's learning to dance in the rain." As the graduation ceremony concluded, applications from human candidates flooded the Academy's communication systems. Word had spread across the galaxy. If you wanted to learn true strength, you learned from the species that did cartwheels where others could barely crawl. The age of human expansion had begun, not through conquest, but through a cartwheel that defied physics and redefined possibility.